Hello, welcome back to another Your Bold Voice. I have, I say this every week. I have a very special guest. So I guess I'm biased with all my guests, but I have a really special guest, which we'll get into here in a moment. But welcome back, season 4, Your Bold Voice. Um, this is where I showcase some beautiful, fascinating females that are really claiming their boldness on their terms and risk taking. I can now add to that, I've had a few men on the show that are doing the same thing. So we've expanded here at Your Bold Voice. And before I go any further, I would like to make an announcement that on March 23rd and March 24th, there will be an event that is hosted by Dr. Lisa Wicker, and she runs Career Mastered Magazine. If you go to my page on LinkedIn, you will see the Women's History Diversity Leadership Summit and Awards, March 23rd, March 24th. There's a link on there for you to check it out, purchase a ticket, and join. The other part is I'm being honored as Career Master Diversity Impact 50 list. I'm one of the honorees. When I found out about this, I almost fell off my chair. It is such are so prestigious. So that's not the only reason I want you all to attend. There's a great reason for all of you to attend. So just head on over to well, you're on my LinkedIn page now because we are live. Just look for the post and there'll be a link. And I can also add it in on this show afterwards as well. All right, before we go any further, as you all are logging in, Judy and I do not know if you are here unless you type something in the comments. You can say a thumbs up, hello, how are you, whatever. If we don't respond, we're not ignoring you. I am here to focus on Judy and as being my guest and the show. And so with that all being said, let me do the honor of introducing Judy Hoberman, who is the president of Judy Hoberman and Associates, a company focused on empowering professional women. She is an award winning international speaker, best selling author, trainer, and leading authority on women in leadership with over 3 decades in business. She combines wisdom and humor with her behavior shaping behaviors and is often described as transformational. She was a TEDx speaker talking about prejudging people. She's the author of 4 books, one of my favorites, Selling in a Skirt and Walking on Glass Floor. Judy's mission is to help one woman a day by following an important philosophy. Women want to be treated equally, not identically. And sign me up for that last comment. Judy, thank you for being here today. I so appreciate you.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here. It's been a while since we've chatted in person like this.
I know, and you and I go back. We met online within a circle of, people
Mhm.
that we're connected to, and you and I clicked and hit it off as soul sister hippie girls from back in the day. And so when you said yes to the show today, I'm like, yes, I cannot wait. As we launch Women's History, we just wrapped up Black History Month yesterday. And today, March 1st, we are launching Women's History Month. So we got a lot of history months going on here. So
We
I'm
do.
honored to kick it off with you.
Well, I'm thrilled, and yes, it's the two of us are the perfect way to start a new month. A month. So here we go into March.
I know. So let's jump in.
Okay.
Let's talk about how are you, this amazeballs woman that I know that is this amazing leadership, this a leadership coach, facilitator, not to mention this awesome TEDx speaker and international recognized speaker. How did you get into all this leadership work?
I think that it probably started when I decided to enter the world of financial services, and I was the only female for a while, and I had to come up with my own playbook on how to do things. And as I was doing that, the men started to notice that my numbers were going up and up and up and up. So they started asking me questions. How did you do this? And that person seemed so difficult. How did you do that? And I said, it's really about building relationships. And that's where it all started, was building relationships and starting to care about people, like really care about them, and showing them some of the speed bumps they're going to hit and how to maybe, take a left turn. So it started, many, many decades ago, and it just kept continuing. When I entered a corporate position, I stayed there for a while, but I realized it wasn't the right place for me. The environment wasn't right. But I do remember sitting myself down with my three favorite people, me, myself, and I. And I said, what would I do if I was starting all over? What is it that I would look for? And I said, I would look for somebody that looked like me. And I don't mean physically look like me, but a female that would have been able to say, you know what? Here's what's going to happen. And let's try this and let's do this together. And I became that person because I didn't have that person. There was no person like that for me. So I became that person. And that's how I started doing, leadership and sales.
That's usually too a lot of a process of identifying our ideal client is a
Mm,
lot in us because that's what we teach and coach is what we have either have evolved through and still working on it, maybe up leveraging different levels and things like that. That is one of the biggest things. I love the fact that you sell in a skirt because I listen, years ago when you and I met, I never could have said this to you, but I can say it to you today. I love selling. I like if I could sell all day long, I would. I love selling, but the key point, what you just said, is building those relationships.
mhm.
And not everybody's going to be our customer or our client. They could be a strategic referral partner, a customer, or client. Maybe the timing's not right, whatever, but it's all about those relationships.
Yeah, that's very true. And the way to start the relationship is to actually start asking questions and finding out like what's important to that person. And when you do that, I always say you want to be interested in that person rather than interesting to that person.
Mhm.
And so that's how the relationships start. But it always, makes me laugh when people say to me, so what is the biggest secret about sales? Not everybody's like you that says, I love this sales. I love doing sales. For me, I stopped selling. I stopped selling. It doesn't mean I don't sell because I do sell, but I stopped selling. I started having conversations and building relationships and conversations and building relationships. And that's really
Yeah.
how my business started. That's how I did, well in financial services because I asked questions and I listened. And that's the key. It's all about relationships. That is the key.
Yeah. I always say we have two of these and one of these, two of
Mhm.
these and one of these, and two is more powerful than the one. And it's really listening. And the reason why I love selling, the reason why I love discovery calls when potential clients reach out is because
Mhm.
guess what? I get to put on my curiosity hat and I get to learn about this person.
Right.
I'm that person that sits at the mall. I love people watching. I get so curious,
Yeah.
or we'll be out somewhere and I'll start asking questions and I'll come home and talk to my husband and say, blah, blah, blah. He goes, God, you ask a lot of questions. I'm like, dude, you went to law school. And he's not a lawyer. He's in the insurance business, but it's like, that's what thrills me, finding out about people and asking those questions and building that. And what you said is it's not about making us feel important and look good. It's about understanding and getting to know that other person and asking questions, asking questions, asking questions.
No, that's the secret. That is the whole secret. If you could write a book about the secret of sales, it'll be a page. Here it is.
I know a little bit, right? Just a little bit.
I mean, you have to know your products and you have to know what you're offering and you have to know how to create solutions. But if you don't know how to ask a question and if you don't know how to listen, there is nothing else because nobody cares. You can't keep saying, "Do you want this? Do you need this? When are we going to see each other?" It's more about let's get you talking. Let's get you sharing what's most important. And that to me is I don't think it's people always say you have to be a born salesperson. No, you don't. You don't, because all you have to do is just like say, okay, I want to know about you. Tell me about you, Kim. What's going on with you? And that's where it starts.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's the same thing with leaders. People are born leaders. No, we're not. Listen, the only thing that we are born with is that suckling so that we can eat when we're these little babies coming through. Everything else is learned and
Mhm.
skills, and we have strengths. And I don't like to talk about the weaknesses, but we have strengths, we have weaknesses, we have areas where we thrive in, and everything is a learned skill. So when you were in the financial world, what else did you have to overcome in order to learn how to sell?
Well, there was no training. There was, here's a
Mhm.
brochure, go and do it. And so that was a little bit difficult, especially because when you talk about anything that's insurance or financial, there's a lot of compliance issues. There's a
Yes.
lot of, things that the actuaries put together so it works like this and it works like that. And if you don't understand that, you're not taking somebody into the right position. So I sat and I studied every product brochure, and if I didn't understand it, I would read it out loud, and I'd say, okay, which part is uncomfortable for me, because I'm also a client. And so that was part of it. But to me, there was no sales training, and there was nothing called soft skills. We didn't have that back then. It's just, sell, go out and sell. So I had to learn, and I would just practice. I would practice on anybody that would
Yeah.
sit still. I would practice on my kids, and I would say, okay, today I'm going to sell you an insurance policy. I'm like, sure, mom. But it was more about me understanding how to get somebody to talk, because when I would ask a yes or no question, that's what I'd get, a yes or no, maybe so. But when I would ask a question that was open ended and they
Mhm.
started talking, that's when I got my notebook out and I took copious notes and I wrote exactly what they said in their own words. So then I can go back and say, okay, Kim, so when we talked about this, what you said was blah, blah, blah. Tell me why that's important, and continue that conversation. And people always said to me, you make it so easy. Like you really listen. And that's the best compliment that a salesperson can get at any point, is that you really listened. So I had to teach myself all of that. I had to teach myself how to, you know, ask for referrals. I had to teach myself how to have a conversation that was meaningful. I had to teach myself to not talk about who I was, but
Mhm.
get them into the conversation. So it was a lot of things that I had to teach myself, because we just didn't have any kind of training.
Yeah, that's how it was for me when I was back in the day when I was in corporate, because I was in corporate it was a couple lives back, but yes, I was in corporate. There was no training. And I remember my first big management leadership position. I was thrown into it. There was no
Yeah,
training, and sure, I can learn while I'm on the run like that, but boy, oh boy, there's just no training back then. The other thing I see, Judy, is, and I'm going to pick on our gender because I specifically work with our gender, women, is I see the tap dance around money as well.
oh,
So it goes back to the comment, which I think you and I, and I'm saying this lightly. So please, if anyone's listening, do not hold me to this, but Judy and I need to co-author a book around sales. And you're right. Yes, that might be a page, but following that page is that net worth, no pun intended, that net worth that women carry around the tap dance of money, and being
yeah,
uncomfortable to ask for what they are worth, and being okay with that when someone says no.
yeah. Because you can't take it personally. It has nothing to do with you. It usually doesn't have anything to do with you. And if it does, that's a whole different story. But most of the time, the relationship with money for women comes from what we were told growing up.
Mhm.
And it's funny, I just had this conversation this morning with somebody, but when you hear that money doesn't grow on trees and
Yeah.
money's the root of all evil and all that kind of stuff about money, you take that with you. So now you're supposed to charge what you're worth. How do you even know what you're worth if you don't even understand what the value is?
Yeah.
Because that's all it's about. It's about the value. It's not about how much it's going to cost per hour. It's about the value that you bring, the experience, the expertise. And that's sometimes difficult. It's also difficult to ask somebody for money, even if it's something that you can't negotiate. For me, when you sold an insurance policy, you couldn't say, you know what, it's really $800, but for you, Kim, I'm going to mark it down, because you can't do that. So it took some of the burden off you, because it wasn't something that you were actually charging. This is something. This was, was something that, even though it's not tangible, it was somewhat more tangible than a service.
Yeah.
So it's hard when you don't understand the value that you bring to the table. I always tell people when they say to you, "What do you bring to the table?" Just say, "I bring the table." Like, I bring the table. That's how much I'm worth. I bring the table.
Yep. And I also bring chairs too, but sometimes it gets a little heavy. So you know what? You all can just stand up around the table too.
That's
But you're right,
correct.
Judy. Yeah, we do. We bring the table, and it's being able to be grounded and confident enough to
Yeah.
say that with because I teach, with all the sensations. If the palms are perspiring, rock on. That means you're pushing out of that
Yeah.
comfort zone. You got a little perspiration going on in the underarms. Well, guess what? We live in a first world country. There's soap and water when you get home. I mean,
You're so funny.
Absolutely embracing those sensations when you say that you are powerfully saying, I bring the table. And maybe it is the first time you are saying, I bring the table. Those sensations mean you're on track, you're aligned to where you're going. And don't let
Yes.
them hold you back to play small and go under the table. Sit at that table or stand at that table. Make sure
Yeah.
you're in that room standing. I love that. And I know you've done a lot of work with the selling in a skirt because ever since I met you, gosh, I don't know how many years ago that was. It was Judy she's the selling in the skirt woman. And I always have loved that. And then of course, the TEDx talk. I mean, you are amazing because
Oh, thank you.
I just did a 5-minute mock-up TED talk in Vegas with my coach in September. And I also just did TEDx coaching for Rutgers Camden. We just had this in February 5th. And I'm fortunate, I get to experience what the rigorousness people go through to get up to that TED stage. I don't want to scare anyone away. Please, if that's on your to-do list, go for it. But
Yeah.
just you got to have sleeves push up and in committed. It's an intense, and that's why Kim Boudreaux Smith at this point has not done a TEDx talk yet.
Yeah, it's something that if you can do it, if you have the opportunity to do it, you should do it.
Yes.
It is scary. I'm going to tell you, it was one of the scariest things I've ever done, but it was also one of the best things I've ever done. For me, I when I applied the first time, I wasn't accepted.
Hmm.
And I just think it was because of the theme and everything else. But TED has a very strict regimen of what you have to do,
They
what you
do.
can't do. The hardest thing for me, one of the hardest things was you have to stand in this red circle because according to TED, they have to video you and everything. So you can't be walking around. I'm a walker.
Hmm.
I'm a walker. So now I have to stay in this one spot. But truly the hardest thing for me was I was going to tell a story I had never told out loud before. And I picked a TED stage to do it. So I really had to work at this. I really had to work at it because I couldn't get through it. When I first started practicing, I couldn't get through it. And so I had to rearrange where that story would take place in the TED talk because you have 18 minutes, but they really like 15 minutes. So it was all of those things. But I do remember that a friend of mine does neurolinguistic programming.
Hmm.
And she said to me, I'm going to ask you some questions because we're going to figure out like why you're so like freaked out about this. Forget about the story. It was just freaking out. And I apologized to everybody that I loved. And I said, I am very snarky because I'm scared to death to do this. And that
Hmm.
was the truth. But she said to me, so when you think of a TED talk, what's the first thing that you hear? And I said, applause. And it doesn't matter what TED talk you open up, it's the applause that you hear first. Then she said to me, what color calms you down? And I said, purple. She said, okay. And what are you nervous about? I said, I'm really nervous that I'm going to forget something and not be able to tie it together with the theme because the theme was outside the lines. She said, okay, are you wearing anything that's really important to you? And I said, yes, my wedding ring. She said, okay, so before you get on stage, I want you to take a deep breath. And then I want you to hear the applause. I want you to see the purple. And I want you to know that you're not going to forget anything and turn your ring. So, of course, I thought, well, this is just bogus. This is not going to work. But I loved her. So I thought, I'm going to give it a shot. So I get up there and I do all my things and I start and I'm good. Like I'm really good. And I'm thinking, whoa, this really works until I got to the story. And then I remember like turning my ring again. And I don't know why I did. I turned my ring again and I just started talking. Now I was good through the whole entire thing until the very end of it. And then I just burst into tears. But what I do remember after this whole thing was when my husband was there, I said, don't sit in front of me because I can't look at you. If I look at you, I'm going to start to cry. And you can't see anything anyway because the lights are so bright. But when we left, we were back in the car. He showed me pictures that he took of me. And he took a picture of the second time I turned the ring without me even knowing the picture was being taken. And I remember the feeling that I had when I did that, that I could get through this. And he has the picture. So it was pretty interesting.
We all need the energetic, I call that energetic things like that. That, like you're going, I love this person, but this is a bunch of BS. But you know what?
Yeah.
Hey, I like
Yeah.
her. I'm
Yeah.
going to try. I mean, there's so much to do. There's emotional freedom tapping. There's so many things that we can do to get us over those humps, especially when we've got that spotlight on us and that spotlight from TED TEDx stages to in boardrooms to one-on-one, very
Yeah.
high leveraging, high stakes conversations. There's always things that we can do to get ourselves through it. And here's what I love when we get ourselves through it. I don't know about you. I feel like Superwoman. I
Yeah.
did it. I mean, that's confidence. That's empowering. That's humanness. So it's taking care of ourselves leading up to that event. And when you're in that event, what are you going to do to keep going through it?
Yep.
But
Yep.
I love that story. That's my first time hearing that story. I love that
Yeah.
story. I
Thanks.
love that story.
It was quite an ordeal. But it was, I mean, for me, it was like something great. So somebody said, people keep asking, you going to do another one? I'm like, nope, nope. I couldn't top that one, to make it any better, other than maybe not bursting into tears at the end, which was fine. But I don't want to do another one. That was my TED talk.
Yeah, that was it. That's it. Check it off. Just check it off
Yeah.
that box. Exactly. Did you do was it, TEDx was it Dallas that you did it, or did you have to travel somewhere?
No, it was Turtle Creek, which is part of Dallas.
Okay,
Yeah.
so you didn't have to travel far,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
some people do travel. Some people
Yeah.
come in from Europe to do,
Yeah.
TED
Yeah.
Talks here,
Yeah.
which I'm not quite sure I could, push my sleeves up and do something like that, but,
You never know.
y
It depends on the theme. For
yes,
me,
exactly,
outside the
exactly.
lines meant it was about being prejudged. That was what my whole thing was about, being prejudged. And so, it worked for me. That's why I was accepted. The first one, I don't even remember what the theme was, but it wasn't, I couldn't own that. I think that was the problem. So,
Were you walking up onto that stage concerned about being prejudged?
oh my gosh, are you kidding? Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. The whole thing.
Those OPOs, those other
Yeah.
people's opinions, yeah.
The whole thing. In fact, I actually say that in the talk. I said, just look around you. Have you prejudged anybody? You probably prejudged me. And I know people do that all the time.
Yeah.
That's the whole story about that. So yeah,
Yeah, it's a great topic, and congratulations to you.
thanks.
I think you had conquered that right before I'd met you.
I think so.
I
I
think
think
you already had the TEDx on your, roster next to your name by the time I had met you, which is great. So tell me, what are you seeing a lot of with clients out there as far as challenges and struggles and concerns around the leadership training that you do?
Well, here's the thing. Over the last 2 years, we know that nobody has been in person doing anything. So even your leadership teams aren't really leading in person,
Mhm.
and that is a big struggle for
Yes, it
people.
is.
Trying to keep people together and connected. That's a big deal. That's a very big deal. But it's also, it's not just women in leadership. It's leadership, about culture, or somebody that inherited something and now his whole team is there, and so they're bringing new people in, or trying to get somebody prepared to be a leader. Because the truth is that sometimes when you are promoted to a leadership position, it's like, okay,
Mhm.
go for it. When I was promoted to an agency manager, this is how I understood that my position was different, because I was a sales leader. So I didn't do a lot of recruiting, but I did. But as an agency manager, you have to recruit. They don't want you selling as much, but you have to recruit. And I had an office and everything else. And, we had our deliveries the same time every week. Everything was the same. I come in that Monday, and FedEx comes in and he hands me a COD slip. And I'm like, what is this for? He said, your supplies. I'm like, I don't pay for supplies. He said, I don't know. It has your name on it, and this charge. I'm like, that's ridiculous. So I call the supply guy and I said, hey, I just got the COD card, this slip. I'm supposed to pay this? And he goes, oh, congratulations. You're an agency manager. That's how I found out that that's how it started. I mean, I didn't know anything. They didn't tell me anything. They just said, congratulations. There you go. Okay, now you pay for this. Now you pay the rent. Now you do this. Now that's how I was. So just imagine, coming into a field where there is nobody that's going to support you. That's what I see in leadership a lot of times. Sometimes there are great people surrounding you, but sometimes you have nothing. You got to do this on your own. So that's part of leadership. Confidence is a huge part of
Mhm.
leadership. And so many people are not confident in anything that they do, and they don't know how to become confident. So, all of those things, being generous with your time, mentoring people. So it's all a big, bucket of stuff, but that's what I see every single day. And that's what people are looking for. They need support. They need an executive coach, or they need training in this, or it's different, and it's all the same.
Yeah, I see a lot of people resisting a lot of that as well, and I'm sure that's a little bit of that going back to that what your TEDx, that being judged, and
Mhm.
is that are they going to view me as being weak, and am I going to lose my job? And and not to mention, like you were saying, everything else of the last couple
Yeah,
of years that we've been in, the whole pivot that we have done, and coming out of that slowly but surely. But yeah, I hear that a lot, of the lack of the leadership and people feeling so alone.
right,
I'm a big proponent about, look, not everybody's meant to have a home office.
right.
Some people are meant to drive to brick and mortars. I personally, I like walking down a hall to my brick and mortar. I mean,
Yeah,
it works for me, but not everybody. And I recall 2 years ago, it wasn't like 90 days to get prepared. It was overnight.
right.
Everyone's in. So, it's been a huge change. Uh, I'm still taken aback a bit by hearing from women in leadership how they're showing up to meetings and they just don't know what to say,
Or they don't say anything.
or they don't say anything, and then but yet they're turning to the team, and it's like, well, no, we need to lead one in that position and also create those safe, sacred environments for everybody to open up on Zoom. And by the way, those safe, sacred environments on Zoom can be done. I learned that really quick early on, and just open that up. But a lot of times we have to it's like go back to elementary school, and it's that, oh, you want to ask a question, but you don't, and someone does. And it just kind of like gets everyone else
Yeah,
going
yeah,
as well. And that's the analogy that brings to mind for me and people need to, I agree with you, Judy, they need to learn how to enhance and amplify their confidence. And to me, because my first business is a fitness business, confidence is like a muscle.
yeah,
Listen, if I have a
absolutely.
lack of sleep the night before, my confidence is not gonna be real strong the next day because I'm gonna be dragging. I'm gonna be off my game a little bit. That is okay.
Mhm, mhm.
But it's learning how to maneuver through all of that.
Yeah, and that is, it's difficult at best, and you have to decide how you're going to show up. And for me, Kim, I play mind games with myself. I do. I always play mind games because it makes me clear, it makes me sharp, and but I have to have something that I'm working towards. When I first got into corporate, we had this gigantic conference table and everybody is, around this table, and I walk in and it's all men and
Oh,
me,
yes.
and around the perimeter are the women that have other titles like executive assistant or something like that, thinking that they're not leaders. Oh my goodness, executive assistants have more power than almost anybody in the entire
Yes,
building.
they do.
Anyway, so here I am, I'm sitting at this table, and I remember thinking that I have got to say something in my first meeting or I'm going to lose the opportunity to let people know who I am, why I'm here. And so I have this pink pad that I always use, and on the pink pad, as I was waiting for everybody to settle in, I wrote down the presenter, I wrote down the time, I wrote down what their thoughts were, all these different things. I'm playing a mind game, and the meetings are usually an hour. So I said by 30 minutes, I have got to either add something to what somebody said or have something to say because I don't want to walk out of the meeting saying, I should have said this, I should
Mhm.
have said that, because that's the worst. Anyway, so I'm writing things down and I give people stars and flowers and hearts, things that I like. And there's people that just talk for the sake of talking and like they're repeat offenders. And then I had something to say, but there was no space because everybody was like talking over each other. So I'm thinking like do I interrupt? Do I do what everybody else does, or do I just wait? And the person that was talking said, does anybody have anything to add? And I'm thinking, okay, this is it. This is my chance. So I said, I do. And I said something which really was exactly what they needed. And because I was new and I didn't have, the same vision as they had, I was able to say this that they didn't think of it. After I said it, Kim, it was as if the air was sucked out of the room.
Mm.
Like nobody spoke,
Yeah.
and all I kept saying was, "Oh my God, oh my God, I'm going to be fired. I'm not even here a day, whatever." And I was sweating. Talk about the sweat. Yeah, everything was sweating. And it lasted only about, I don't know, 30 seconds, but to me it was like 30 years. And then he said, "Oh my goodness, that's brilliant. Why didn't we think of that?" And then everybody like took a, a deep breath together. It was everybody exhaled and they felt better. But I think that if I didn't say something that day, I might not have ever said it. So it was a mind game because I had all these check marks and things and stars and whatever. That's really how I started it all because I needed to have something that was going to push me forward.
Yeah. I love the little game that you
I
play.
do. I do.
It adds lightness and fun to it, and could be in a situation that could be very overwhelming for somebody, but it adds that lightness and that fun to it, and it's like I hear, like, goal setting that, "Okay, by 30 minutes in, I do need to speak up because this is
Right.
what's going on." So many women, I included, back in my corporate day, would walk out, either get in the bathroom and break down or get back into my office, close my door, and go, I should have said. And that should of shoulding all over myself, of had said, creates such a dis-ease
Yeah.
within us. And it grows. It grows like Popeye, like olive oil giving Popeye spinach. It grows like
Yeah.
crazy. It grows.
But you also have to be open to possibilities. I mean, people always say, well, what's the worst that can happen? I always say, what's the best that can happen? When I was building my team, I made sure that I had the right people. And if I didn't have the right people, I would keep looking for all the right people. But I also did one thing, and I always talk about this. I knew my people. I knew why they were here. I knew what they wanted. And I would always say to them, how do you see yourself with this company? Not
Mhm.
with me, with this company. There were only three answers that they could give you. The first was, I just want to be a producer. I'm like, great, let me show you the journey. The second was, I want to go into the leadership team. I'm like, great, let me show you the journey. Or the third was, I want your job. So after I laughed, I would say, well, I could show you the journey because I knew what they wanted. So if they were stuck somewhere, I knew which
Yeah.
way they were supposed to be going. But I also knew their families. I knew about them. So if I asked somebody to do a trade show with me on the weekend, they would know who their mom or dad was working with. So it was really important for me to know my people. And when somebody says, what's the most important thing about leadership? I always say, you have to know your people more than anything. If you don't know your people, how do you know what moves them? How do you know what scares them? How do you know what motivates them? Everybody says it's about money. It isn't about money.
No.
Money's in the top five, but especially for women, money's not always. Recognition is a big one for women. They just want people to see that they know what they're doing,
Mhm.
you know? So there's a lot of good stuff there.
Yeah, I'm a big proponent on getting to know your teams. I'm not in corporate, obviously. I don't have the teams, but
Right.
my husband and I do have this conversation. And look, all work and no getting to know and play makes for a very high stressed, very dull environment.
Yep.
And yes, we do need to be productive, but we can pause that productivity button for, gosh, 10 minutes just to check in. How are you doing? How's Johnny and Susie? Oh my God, how are you managing? One day kids are home, the next day they are not. It's been such a crazy last 2 years. And even prior to that is getting to know the team. That's that humanness connection. That's that personalness
Right.
that, as much as people want to share, to be able to be present and open. And it's like you said, Judy, especially for women. Women just want to be acknowledged of the fact that we do know what we are doing, and to be
Right.
to be heard, because for
Right.
so many years we've been not allowed to vote. You can't get a loan without a man next to you.
Can't get a
You know,
credit card.
can't get a
Yep.
credit card. You're not going to be paid as much. So we have been swept to the side, and more than ever, I believe, now that we've just recently entered a new year, is I believe in 2022, this social media platform is the noisiest it's ever been. Even noisier back than when we are in quarantine. It
Mhm.
is noisy, and people want to be felt. They want to be validated and heard.
I was just going to say, they want to be heard.
Hmm.
And if you do not listen, and if you don't at least acknowledge the fact that they said something, you don't have to agree. You don't have to agree. But it's like my tagline, women want to be treated equally, not identically. The truth of the matter is, if we just want the opportunity. We're not asking you to do our job. We're not asking you to pick up
Yep.
because we're women. Just, let us have the opportunities. That's really what it's all about. And there are so many ways we could take this conversation.
Listen, I don't know about you. I'm down on Hilton Head. I got all afternoon. No, I don't want to assume that you have all afternoon either, but you're right. There are so many ways we can do that. And that's very effective. It goes back to what you were saying in the beginning, Judy. That's effective communication and more
Yeah.
so effective listening. And effective listening comes into that effective communication. Absolutely. All right. Before we go on any further, how can people get in touch with you besides here on LinkedIn?
Well, I mean, the easiest way is on LinkedIn because I'm Judy Hoberman on LinkedIn. But I'm on all the platforms. A lot of the times I'm selling in a skirt because people do remember selling in a skirt more often than they remember Judy Hoberman. My website is selling in a skirt. My email is Judy at selling in a skirt. You can catch me anywhere. And I do respond personally. I don't have anybody else responding on my emails or anything. And, I post all the time. So there's always stuff. And what I want to do is I want to make people think. I'll ask you a question or I'll give you a scenario. And I just want you to think about what would you do? How would you handle this? Because everybody's different. And I love to hear what people think and how they do things. I remember we were very structured, like I said, financial services, very structured. And we were training on a big product. And the training was 6 hours. And we would go and we would fly somewhere. We would train for 6 hours. And then we'd fly somewhere else and we trained for 6 hours and so on. And there were 4 teams that were going out. And somebody on a team got sick. So we pulled somebody here, we moved somebody there. It was all kinds of good stuff. Well, the person that came onto my team was not one of our people, and I was like, we knew exactly what we had to do and how it was, and it was perfect, and da 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 da. So he comes in and he starts doing it totally differently, like totally differently. And I'm sitting there taking notes and whatever, and I'm thinking, like, that's not how we do this. That's not how we do it. And I kept thinking, like, why am I like this? I know I want this because it was always smooth for 6 hours. Now we have like these bumps in the road. Well, I put my pen down and I said, you know what? I'm going to listen to what he's talking about. And what he did was he got to the same exact results that we wanted. It was just different.
Yeah.
And I thought at that moment, I learned something new. I learned, this was the scenario he gave. This is how he was talking about it. And I said, I'm going to incorporate some of that because I really like it.
Yes.
But I had to change my mindset as to it's got to be this way because old ways don't open new doors. And
Mhm.
that's exactly what, I was like, this is how we always do it. This is how, and when somebody says that to me, like, but this is how we always do it, I'm like, yeah, let me tell you, it's not. Don't do it like that. But it was a big learning curve for me. And as a leader, I had to like take my ego and like toss it because it wasn't about me. It was about 400 people sitting in a room that needed to learn this, and they learned it. We just learned it differently. So,
Yeah.
you know, it's
Yep.
it's just it's interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, there's always space and room for that expansion and looking at things differently and still being able to go back and facilitate it Judy's way, but extracting and bringing in other things to really add spice of variety. For me personally, that adds, I get bored doing the same thing over and over again. That just up levels and adds some variety. And you just okay, if you brought so many golden nuggets to the show today, but let me tell you this one main thing. And I'm going to add, toss the damn ego. You didn't say damn, but boy, toss the damn ego. All of us toss the
Yes,
ego.
it isn't about you.
No,
That's all. It isn't about you. It has nothing to do with you, and you have to stop thinking that the world revolves around you because when you find out it doesn't, you're going to be disappointed.
exactly. One of the analogies, one of the examples I like to learn, that I like to not learn but use is, okay, Judy, you and I are meeting at Starbucks at 2 o'clock this afternoon on the corner of Fourth and Main or wherever, right? And look at, I do care that you arrive safely, but I don't care what directions you take. You're going to probably go left, up the street, around the corner, right, and da da da, into that, and I'm going to go. "Eh." It doesn't matter. We still arrive to the same
Yeah,
destination at the same time very safely. It doesn't matter how we get there. The goal has been accomplished that we're meeting at Starbucks at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And that's the same thing with being with that gentleman in the room.
right.
There's always different ways, different eyes, different ears, different mouths to embellish and embrace and move things through.
But if you don't allow it,
Mm,
it's not going to happen.
no.
And that's when you lose your people because they're thinking like you only have one way or the highway. And that's totally not me. And yet that day it was me. I'm
Yeah.
like, where did I come from? Because that is not me. I would never do that to somebody. And I didn't do it to him. I did it on my paper to me, to him.
Yes.
you know?
Yeah. I'm you know what? I am now going to start doing, well, I've got a remarkable, but I'm gonna start doing paper like that. I'm gonna start Judaizing when I'm in meetings and things
I
like
love
that.
doing that. I have more notebooks for everything that I do, and I just take copious notes, and
Yes.
I have everything that's written down, and and I just to me that's how I learn. I don't learn, if I'm doing it on a phone or a tablet. I don't learn like that. I learn when I write. Of course, sometimes I write so fast I can't read it, but
I know that I was having I got a remarkable for my birthday, and it's just like a pad of paper. I love it, but I'm gonna add the Judaizing to the hearts around things, or the little
yeah,
stars, and the arrows pointing and things. I really really like that. That for me would be embracing going to Starbucks the different direction,
yeah,
embracing that
yeah,
way.
yeah.
Is my analogy. All right. So, like Judy said, she's on LinkedIn. I know she's on Instagram because I see her on Instagram. I also see her on LinkedIn. You and I met years ago on Facebook. I'm not looking too much on Facebook. For those of you who are listening in, please connect with her. You heard her website, Selling in a Skirt. Check her out. Get
I'm all,
especially
I was going to
go
say I'm also on Clubhouse. I started on Clubhouse
mm.
I had a goal to do it in 2021. I did it December 31st. I was going to do it. I wasn't going to, so I have a room. It's exec women in leadership, exec women in leadership. And it's Friday mornings at 8 Central. And we have some juicy topics going on.
Ooh, I'm gonna have to join that. Now, I am not a Clubhouse girl, but because you are leading that and that environment, I am going to have to add Clubhouse back to my iPhone
Uh,
and get on in there and track
yeah.
you
Yeah. You should
down.
come and visit and just, have something to say. Just raise your digital hand. We bring you up
Yeah.
and it's great conversation.
Yes. Yeah.
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 Last week we
I
talked
I
about are you worth it? So that was a big conversation.
I just, you know what? I'm going to have to do that. Thank you for sharing that. For those of you, I see a few people that have
Yeah.
put comments in. That would be a great place to jump in and also as well raise your digital hand. I see a few very familiar people on here that have
Hmm.
joined us today. Please get linked up on LinkedIn, no pun intended there, with Judy, please. Because she does offer some amazing content. Like I said,
Thanks.
I see it on Instagram. I love it. I love, my little heart. Sometimes I make a little comment. So here's well, I've got two final questions for you. This is your bold voice, and you have a beautiful bold voice. But what's still hanging out there for Judy that she's still working on around that boldness?
One of the things I'm still working on is putting together a program for executive women. And the reason I say I'm still working on that is because I do a lot with entrepreneurs and I keep feeling this tug that I've got to go into, seeing my executive women. So I'm working on that. It's probably going to be out in the next few months or so. I'm not exactly sure, and I'm not exactly sure what it looks like, but that's what I'm working on. And I'm very excited about it because now I can have two different directions that we work with. So yeah.
You and I are walking side by side this year because that's my other ideal client. My other avatar is that corporate woman, and that's what
Hmm.
my business is expanding into this year. So, you let me know if you need support around that, a conversation or whatever. You know where
Same.
to contact me.
And same for you. Yeah.
Thank you. I'm so excited for you to be doing this. I think that is fantastic. All right,
Thanks.
your last bold words to wrap up the show.
So I don't want to necessarily repeat know your people, but I think that is an important quality to have is to know your people. And with that, I'm going to tell you that being generous with your time is something that a great leader has to learn how to do. I know we're all busy. I know we don't have time to mentor and to talk to every single person. But when you're generous with your time and you say one thing that changes somebody's outlook or changes their position or changes their life, and they come out of nowhere saying to you, because of you, Kim, I'm here. And something like that is just it just warms your heart. So know your people and be generous with your time. Those are two huge qualities of a great leader.
Yes, and time is an asset. It is
Mm,
an asset. It's not like I don't have enough time. We have time, and those are those are beautiful qualities of a leader, but those are beautiful qualities of a human being as well.
absolutely.
As a human
Absolutely.
being,
Mhm.
so Judy, thank you so much for being my guest today. I
Thanks for having
so
me.
enjoy it. Yes, yes. And please, everybody who is logged in, who is going to listen to the replay, connect with Judy here on LinkedIn. And what, both of us or one of us for sure will get back on the comments. And
Yes.
I will also put a link out there for the Career Master Diversity Award and Summit as well. I hope you can join us. And again, Judy, thank you. Everyone, get out there, make it a great day, and I'll see you right here, same time, same place next week.
Thanks.